everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the Project and Event Manager at Microsoft Toronto Reactor. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items with you, our Code of Conduct and Event Guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our Code of Conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. The session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I will share the link with you for our YouTube channel in the chat a little later. And if you've not been on a live stream before through YouTube, please note that you will have to create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions for our speaker, please feel free to reach out to us through social media or on Meetup. And it is now time for our session of the day. I will bring in our speaker, Roy, to the screen. Hi there, Roy. How are you?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so excited for your session. I will actually just, take on with the floor now. Yeah.
Okay.
Take it away.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for the intro, Alexia. So, I will be talking about Azure Kubernetes Service and how you can use Istio Service Mesh with it, and what it's about, and also share my experiences on my usage. So, let's see here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Roy Kim. I've been working with Microsoft Technologies for 18 plus years. More recently, been focusing on Azure, Microsoft 365, and Kubernetes. Did quite a bit of .NET development way back. 5 years as a Microsoft MVP. I'm an independent consultant, and you can find my blog at roykim.ca, and graduate from University of Toronto. So, today, kind of the agenda I'll walk through is just a very quick overview of Azure Kubernetes Service, and just kind of give you a demo of an application that's using Istio, and kind of doing a walkthrough of that. I'll talk about the Istio Service Mesh, just a high-level overview, a few of its capabilities and how I've used them, and commenting on how effective they are, how it's helped in the projects that I've been in, and what were some good key project takeaways. A little about monitoring your service mesh, and then we can end off with a general Q&A. But I like to mention that I encourage any questions during this talk. I'm open to having a dialogue, and so that it's engaging, and that you who are part of this will have some good takeaways. So, first of all, what is Azure Kubernetes Service? It's a managed orchestration, container orchestration service. So really, it's Kubernetes wrapped up by Azure, such that it's pretty like managed. You don't have to install and configure or much of it, but still you get a bit of control. But really, the deep underlying infrastructure, the VMs, the nodes, that's kind of abstracted, and you don't have to manage that so much. But still, we can take advantage of the Kubernetes kind of technologies, such as service discovery, load balancing, auto scale, pod container deployment, and health monitoring, and more. right? But typically, Azure Community Service really supports microservices-based applications, or applications or microservices architectures, right? So that's kind of really the sweet spot of using Azure Kubernetes, and how it differs from other, let's say app service or Azure Functions or even VMs, is that um, it's really to me, I like to describe it as a micro data center, where a lot of kind of software defined controls, at like very networking level, that even like a developer has some control and abilities, right? And also hosting many applications all at once. And it's really the resiliency that you can have control and benefit. So next, so yeah, other things I talked about. So this is like a high level, very simple kind of architecture of Azure Community Service, where, on the left, you have the kind of the cluster manager, kind of like the brains, right, to help schedule and deploy your apps into like pods, and then schedule them out or place them into various nodes. It's not something that you have to be mindful of. So like allocating the appropriate like CPU, memory, disk perhaps, right? Um, so left side is kind of Azure managed. On the right side, it's a bit more customer managed, which is really the VM infrastructure, right? And this is kind of bound into a virtual network, right? So that's just kind of very, very high level kind of general architecture of what Azure Kubernetes Service looks like. Um, and so now, getting to the topic of a service, before we get to what Istio is, I should talk about, well, what is a service mesh? Okay, so Istio is really a kind of a implementation or a type of service mesh. So really a service mesh, taken from kind of how Red Hat defines, and I like their definition, is really um, it's how requests are routed between your microservices, right, or your distributed application, right, throughout within your distributed application, right, through a bunch of proxies, right. So like this dark green box is really kind of your microservice, right, and a microservice can be um, is to me, I would say, just to put it simply, it's just really an app or a set of APIs, right, that are kind of logically organized, right. So microservice, let's say an e-commerce website, can be a shopping cart, and one can be kind of the UI, the general UI, right, or a UI component. Another one could be kind of orders and catalogs, right, but it's all distributed, right. So if when you have a highly distributed and kind of segmented and sliced up, right, like how does each microservice talk with one another, right. So um, and it can get complicated, right? But this is where a service mesh helps manage that traffic and routing between one another, right? So that that logic is really decoupled. And so the idea is really having proxies, right? So, within alongside a microservice, you have a proxy, right? And the proxies is what really talks to one another on behalf of each microservice, right? And the proxy, right, is also, you can call it in a sidecar, right, has the instructions, right, on what to do, right. So you write some declarative kind of logic or code, and that will get deployed to all the sidecars. So let's, and I'll get that more in I'll get more into that in a demo application, but really I just want to mention what service mesh is, and the architecture, right, is that it really involves sidecar proxy technology, and how they're um, programmed, right, or instructed to talk to another, right, to manage traffic, or and like such as kind of routing rules, retry logic, kind of load balancing, et cetera, et cetera. So there's many capabilities, and the whole point is to decouple that logic so that you don't have to like, put that logic right alongside into your application code. So that's really the key point. Now, with Istio, um, let's see here. With Istio, the Istio Service Mesh uses a proxy to intercept all the traffic. So um, and the proxy that is used is called the Envoy proxy. Okay, and this is its own little open source project. Okay, so Istio and even other service meshes or other technologies would use Envoy, right? For kind of, yeah, the sidecar proxy, and so that gets planted alongside each service, like in this case, service A and service B. Now, Istio has something called a control plane, right? So the control plane is, think of it as kind of like the brains of kind of managing all the proxies, Envoy proxies. So like as a engineer or as a developer, you would say, okay, you would program something like, okay, service A can have, route traffic, allow traffic to service B, also include retry logic such that if service B fails, retry up to 3 times, up to, 30 seconds wait time, etc., like timeout, right? And also secure that traffic from A to B with mutual TLS. So code that logic. The Istio control plane will kind of deploy that out to all the Envoy proxies, right? And so when traffic comes along, makes a request to service A, and then service A wants to make a service B, right? Then the Envoy proxy will manage how that traffic behavior should be, right? So kind of this is kind of that flow and that architecture kind of with Istio, um, simply put. So okay, so I'm going to go over some of these demo applications. Okay, I'll talk about the BookInfo app, right, which uses the Istio Service Mesh right here. And in here, I just want to lay out an AKS cluster that I've built out, okay, and includes right here, the BookInfo app right here, okay, in the middle. And there's a microservice called a product page, which is kind of the UI, a reviews component, details, and also rating. So I'll get into that in a bit. Okay. The one thing I want to point out here is that Istio also provides an ingress gateway, right? An ingress controller, and what that is a mechanism to allow traffic or to manage traffic um, external to the cluster, kind of inbound, also ingress and egress into your Kubernetes applications. Okay. Um, so the other a popular option of having an ingress controller is the Nginx ingress controller. So for those that are especially starting out, usually this is the go-to example, right, to be deployed to allow traffic into your cluster. So in this case, I have what's great about Kubernetes is that I can have both, right, and you have a lot of great flexibility. So I have this guestbook app um, that that leverages the Nginx ingress controller. Okay, and then I can leverage the Istio's ingress controller, which has a bit more some of its own capabilities, right? So you can use both, you can use one or the other, but the key message here is that Istio also provides a ingress controller, and for general your traffic management strategy. So I'm going to pause for a bit if anyone would like to have a question, comment, or anything. All right. Okay. I will move on. Now, let's see here. So that is those component sections I talked about. Um, one thing, to add to, an AKS cluster is that you can incorporate or associate like other Azure resources, right? Such as the Azure Container Registry, Azure AD for role-based access within your Kubernetes cluster, right? Like per namespace as an example, Azure Monitor, Log Analytics, and also leveraging Azure Managed Disks for persistent storage. So I just wanted to, as a side note, mention the bigger picture of what a AKS environment holds, um, and all um, the goodness and Azure resources that the Azure platform provides. So let's talk about the BookInfo app, right? Kind of how it behaves. So okay, actually maybe I should revert to a demo here. Okay, itself. So here is the BookInfo app. It is part of my AKS cluster, right? So I can show that through here. See here. So I have a namespace called the BookInfo, right? And I just deploy these kind of YAML files to deploy that. Hold on a sec. So, and let's see here, workloads. I can show book info here. So yeah, right here. So per namespace, just so that I can show that what it looks like from the Azure portal perspective of AKS is that I have these kind of workloads or Kubernetes deployment objects, right? So it's the product page, which is the UI, ratings, reviews. If you have your reviews version 1, 2, and 3, okay, and details and ratings. So that's from the portal point of view, right? So you know that this app is live. And so going back to here, the book info. So so what it is the actual UI is the product info kind of microservice, right? So one thing I want to know here, as I refresh, okay, there's certain elements here that kind of change, right? And that's because the traffic to different components are kind of like rotating or round robin, right? Kind of evenly. So um, let's see here. So this is the first version, right, where you don't see any ratings. So the rating service is not being or used. Okay, where this is the rating service. So you see a rating here of kind of 5 out of 5 stars and 4 out of 5 stars, right? And then here is the review coming from the review service, okay? And this is the book details service. It's all coming, which yeah, all the microservices are coming together to formulate, render this page. So, and then as I hit refresh again, you see reviews in red stars. So that's another version. Okay, so let me refresh again. And as you see, it kind of goes through different versions. Okay, now let's revert to, let's see, uh, back to my slides. Okay, and Whoops. Okay, so here, as you saw, the product page will make a call out to reviews version 1, which, yeah, in fact, it didn't show any reviews. Okay, as you see, there's no stars. And then reviews 2 um, shows stars, black stars. Okay, and then that microservice calls the rating service. Okay, to find out how many stars it was rated, right? Uh, and then version 3 is simply just red stars. Okay, so Istio in this case is kind of programmed or instructed to kind of divide the traffic, kind of like one third, one third, one third. Okay, um, and so that is an example of how traffic is managed. Okay. Um, and also here, as I mentioned, the detail service, okay, which is the information on the left side of the page. So that's kind of how that demo is designed, okay. And so the key one scenario, right? The reason why we have kind of uh, balancing traffic 3 ways is that it's a demonstration of the possibilities, right, of managing the traffic, right? So, um, one thing is you can have like A/B testing, right? So, like one third of users will see a certain version, and then another set of users will see a second version, and then see a third version, right? And then you can kind of um, see what the user experience is, their feedback, between the 3 versions, right? So to have A/B testing scenario. Another scenario is for, let's say, canary deployment. So let's say you are in your second version, and you can have it that 100% of traffic from product page to the whole reviews component is going to version 2. But you have this really, massively high volume, heavily visited website or application, and deploying V3 is a little risky, right? You never know, right, in production. So you want to deploy it and just give a little bit of traffic, right, to V3, like let's say 5% or 10%, okay, and 90% goes to V2, and that's where Istio comes along, and then you can, again, just declaratively, in kind of the YAML files, define that, right, and it's really changing literally one or a few lines, okay, and then and if as you divert, like let's say 10% of your traffic there, and then for like a few hours or a day you test that and it's good, performance metrics, no errors, you check your logs, it's good, then you start to you know um, add more traffic to V3, okay, 50%, 75%, and then to 100. And in that process, if there's any big errors or issues, you can always easily fall back to version 2. So this is the advantage with Istio, is that let's say you didn't have Istio, then what would you do, right? Like maybe you have to program that, possibly right into the web server of some sort, or even your application code, itself, right? And really managing that, it becomes highly coupled to different areas in your application or your system architecture, and really this is what Istio is designed for, is to decouple that, have its own deployment lifecycle. You manage risk, it's more stable, it's more resilient, right? So that's kind of the whole key benefit of Istio. So hopefully you guys, that's making sense, okay? Um, so yeah, let me go through the key, the let's see here, the key features. Okay. Routing rules, as I mentioned, A/B testing, canary deployment, um, circuit breaker, okay, which is something I've used, and it's pretty practical, especially in a very high volume, enterprise class application where, let's say, um, a certain service, right, gets really let's say that review service, right, um, gets a lot of traffic coming from different microservices, right? And that the review service is really important, and it cannot be, um, it really cannot fail, right? Because then the rest of the application may fail, right, or most of it. So a circuit breaker pattern will make sure that it doesn't overload. Okay, let's say for example it account the amount of traffic it's having, or error rates or whatever. So it may not allow traffic, or limit the traffic, and allow another area of the application to not work, or work at a less lesser like performance expectations, right? To compromise that, then really allow that let's say this review service to come down, right? So it's really much of a risk mitigation kind of strategy here, right? Also, you have set timeouts as well, right? If because you don't want users just waiting, so you have a timeout, and then kind of give appropriate feedback to the users. Retry. So maybe a service A, a service B. Um, a service A is calling service B, and service B, right? May experience transient errors of sorts, and maybe it's calling an external API, and you never know, like for credit card verification, or anything, and that may um, and it that may go down periodically, right? So but may come back up pretty quickly, right? So Istio will have retry logic saying that, okay, if I get some kind of 400 or server error of some sort, that let's retry that traffic, replay that traffic, and the calling application wouldn't know that retry is happening, right? But the calling application, like say service EA, would just be waiting a bit longer, right? So you get that more, and in the end, it becomes a bit of a smoother experience, okay? Although you have to wait a bit more, but it's better than witnessing an actual like error feedback, or error or an exception, right? So again, it's putting that logic into Istio to handle, right? So that you don't have to like hard code or put that logic elsewhere, and manage that. Another key feature of Istio is general observability. So it has capabilities of monitoring, like metrics, distributed tracing, access logs of the traffic, like 200, HTTP status codes, and such. So that becomes pretty helpful for like troubleshooting. And another thing is secure communication, right, between microservices, right? So having TLS, encrypted traffic, authentication and authorization between services. So, one service can't be called by another service unless, it knows who they are, right? And also authorize certain calls, uh, between services. So again, it's all these capabilities, and there's really more features of Istio, but these are the kind of the key ones that I find, in my experience, have been pretty useful. Um, so yeah, and Istio Service Mesh supports microservice architecture and managing HTTP traffic, right? So it's more centered on HTTP traffic. So here it's just I want to visualize, kind of got from the Istio website documentation, right? Just again, um, just illustrating kind of how traffic is managed, right? So right here, service A calling service B, okay, kind of load balance between various pods. And really, as I'm having a canary version and you're managing 5% of that traffic to a newer version, and then when you find that stable, you divert the traffic to 100%. Okay. um, in this case, another scenario which is pretty cool and nifty is that you can manage and route the traffic based on content, right? So if um, the HTTP header, like kind of user agent is Android or iPhone, then you can do it to different microservices or different versions, right? You can route by query string. You can route by HTTP kind of your URL paths. So pretty much anything kind of around that HTTP provides that you can kind of hook into. So that's another example. Any a pause for any questions? Okay. Okay, cool. So here I'm getting into kind of the monitoring part. So this is an example of that BookInfo app where from the Ingress gateway to the product page service, you see traffic, how it's flowing, right? So you know, um, so between from the product page kind of UI, that traffic is split between details and reviews. Okay, and from reviews, you go to the various versions. Okay, in this case. Okay, so and as we saw, it was evenly split. Okay, and then reviews version 2 and 3 called the rating service. Okay, here indicates there's some traffic is red, so that's something to look into, and that's where you can kind of look into the access logs and see kind of what's happening there, you know as such. So this is through Kiali, which is an open source uh, software, right, that works well with Istio Service Mesh. So let me bring a live demo. So what Kiali looks like. Okay, so here is Kiali, and so I've centered it around, filtered it with the BookInfo namespace, and we can see it's all green. Traffic was flowing, and let's see here, requests per second. So the cool thing with Kiali, and really, yeah, another way of explaining what Kali does is really visualizing your service mesh. Okay, so with your edge labels, I hear it, requests per second, request percentage. Okay, so 50-50. Okay, the trap, which is 50%, 50-50 of the traffic that's flowing out of the product page. Okay, let me do something here. Let me hit refresh a few times just to throw some traffic into this application, so it will be reflective into the Kali dashboard. Okay, if we go to requests per second, we see a little bit higher, like 0.42 per second. See here, you can uh, refresh every 10 seconds. Okay. Also, we can look at response time. Okay, which is really helpful for in terms of performance. So it's pretty speedy, I would say. These are pretty good, in the milliseconds. So that is, hold on, let's see here. And if I had more like traffic, it would have been good if I put a load test tool against this, right? You can kind of see animation of error. Okay, actually, hold on. Can I display some, oh yeah, animation, traffic animation. There you go. Okay, there we go. Okay, that looks more cool. So let me go back and hit refresh a few times to throw some traffic across. So here again, we see the traffic flowing. So it's, I don't know, I think it's really awesome to visualize kind of your distributed application and see kind of the value and capabilities in a visual way that Istio provides, right? So, and you can click in here and you can kind of see more. I know it looks pretty small to you, but you can see more metrics here. Let's see here, right? You know, hosts, flags, any kind of errors, etc. So that is kind of from the observability point of view. Um, I will pause if there's any questions here. So, okay. Um, Here we can kind of see, you know, deeper dive into the logs, metrics, outbound metrics right here. Let's see here, if I go to through the services, right? Services object, traces. Let's see here. Oh, and let me see if I can show you the YAML. So here's a bit of okay, it's pretty small, but here's a sneak peek of what the YAML looks like. I'm not going to go into it, but you know, just to give you an idea of you know, the amount of that coding I've been mentioning. Okay, actually, wait a minute. So BookInfo. So that's the virtual service right here. Okay, but anyways, I'm gonna keep this presentation a bit kind of high level. Okay, so let's see, go back to the slides. So that's that. Okay. Oh, there's the other app, voting app of kind of seeing that, but uh, just another example of what Kiali shows here. Okay, so so in summary, I like to mention kind of like what has my experience with been with. You know, I've built applications kind of for kind of retail operations among various stores and warehouses where you know, just tracking kind of inventory. And so really you know, I've used Istio where you know, for a microservices .NET Core kind of application, and it was you know, very useful using, you know, the circuit breaker, retries, the traffic you know, routing rules, um, you know, canary scenarios for deployment, etc., load balancing, performance monitoring, all that stuff, right? So that was very useful in my project experience, and I continue to hopefully kind of use that. There are other players or other options like Console, Linkerd as well, which I haven't really dealt with. Open Service Mesh (OSM). Okay, that's another relatively new open source project, but you know, those are other options that you can look into as well, and there's a few others as well. And so from a really project experience point of view, it's been a good experience. Documentation is pretty good. I have went deeper into very advanced scenarios, and that's where, you know, especially for open source software, where you know, documentation could be limited, or kind of getting support or help through the, you know, forums or communities can get limited. But really, that having, you know, a good foundation is for, you know, your traffic management is there. It's really solid. It continues to get better. One thing that's really tricky is upgrading Istio. I think it's getting better, because you have to update the control plane and the data plane, and how do you do that, smoothly, especially in production, right? So that's something to watch out for, because you need to have an upgrade strategy and upgrade path, and planning, like every, like 4 to 6, 7 months, right? Especially for security patches that may come out. So, um, in summary, really great for traffic management capabilities. Helps as part of your resiliency and scalability um, goals. Okay, can be applied to Azure Kubernetes Service, or any Kubernetes like GCP, AWS. Okay, um, really helps support your really classic microservice architecture, and really I think they really go hand in hand. You know what I mean? You can't go without it, right? Have I think Istio, it kind of manages at TCP level. I haven't really tried that too much, but I think it can. Okay, but really you just need to focus on, most cases just HTTP. So, um, so that is all. I just want to leave it up for just general Q&A. It's my Twitter handle and email. So, uh, let me look in the chat window on the side here. And let me know if there's any questions.
Hi again. I'm just going to jump in here. Yeah, for sure. So Q&A to anyone, please feel free to send your questions in the chat. We have here your contact info. I'm sure if anybody has a question in the future, they can contact you, and yeah, kind of ask their question to you directly. But yeah, I'm just gonna take a few more minutes here while questions have been asked, to have a quick reiteration here for our session. I shared earlier in the chat our survey link. If you have a minute to share your experience on your sessions, please feel free to do so on the link above. We also have Meetup. We're on Meetup. The Microsoft Reactor is on Meetup, as well as multiple social media. If you're interested in joining, future session, you can register on Meetup and always reach out to us on our social media. And yeah, let's have a look. I'm having a look at the chat here, see if there's any questions for now. Yeah. Well, Roy, I think we can give it another minute or two. And yeah. Doesn't look like we have any question. It seems like everything was very clear and well received. So, I mean, I think we can leave it as that. Roy, thank you so much for joining us again. We have some comments here. Again, I think it was just all very clear. Yeah, thanks so much, Roy, for joining us again tonight. And yeah, we hope to have you again very soon.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.